Lee Lieber to moderate the program.
Okay, so just to give you a little overview, we went up to C.A.R. to have the winter business meetings. And the winter meetings are a little different than the fall meetings, because the fall meetings have the expo and they have all the classes. But the winter meetings are really about real estate and what's going on in our industry as far as legislation, locally, statewide, federally. So most of the updates today are going to have that kind of a slant to them. So we've got 3 people and myself that are going to speak today. And the first one I'm going to call on is Nick Baldry to talk about taxation.
Thank you, Lee, and good morning, everyone. I know you guys thought you were rid of me after a full January of me chairing these meetings, but you got me again for the first week of February. As Lee mentioned, I'm going to be talking about taxation and government finance. This committee I was actually appointed to as our regional rep for Region 16. So I spoke on some issues at this meeting as well, despite the fact that this was actually my first time at C.A.R. Winter. So I'll give you some first-time attendees impressions as well. There was only one motion that came out of this particular committee, and that was on ACA 17, ballot measures effective date. The legislation is about as sexy as the title sounds. This proposal would give an additional 5 days after the Secretary of State files a statement of the vote after any ballot measure. Currently the Secretary of State has 38 days to do that for the law to take effect. So in essence it gives the state 5 additional days to implement a new law once it is voted through by the electorate. This would not apply if the law has a specific start date. So if a ballot measure says it will start on January 1st of next year, it would start on January 1st of next year. If the ballot measure says we want to do something, as soon as the voters approve it, then there's the 38 days plus 5 with this measure. All that to say, there was a bit of debate on this motion. There was an initial motion for the association to be for this ballot measure, so C.A.R. would actively support it. That motion didn't even get a second, it was that unpopular. The next motion was to take a neutral position, so this means that C.A.R. is not going to expend any resources for or against. That motion did pass quite comfortably, and this also passed legislative and board of directors as well. A couple of other sizable issues that did come up in taxation and government finances. C.A.R. has been tossing around the idea of proposing a state revolving bond for accessory dwelling units. So this would essentially be a bond that would be a loan for homeowners to build second units that they could then rent out, and this bond would in theory be paid back over a certain amount of time. There was a fair amount of debate and questions for C.A.R. staff, and it was given back to staff to flesh out a little more because it was very conceptual. And the other sizable issue was a report from the Business License Tax Working Group. I don't know if any of you work in any cities that have particularly onerous business license taxes. This group has been essentially trying to figure out whether C.A.R. should be doing anything on a state level, and their conclusion was they didn't need to take any action, as there's not a widespread problem. Most cities tend to be reasonable with their business license taxes. Also, that legislation to impede a city's ability to impose business license tax could have unintended consequences on our independent contractor status, and that the imposition of license taxes is largely satisfactory. So if you work in a city that imposes an onerous license tax, I'm afraid the state association isn't going to stick its neck out for you. However, your local association may be able to do something about it. As a first-time attendee, I don't know, how many of you have been to C.A.R. Winter before? So the majority of us haven't. Just a little, I mean, I'm talking about committees and motions and things like that, but I thought I should let you know how these things progress. Each committee is given a slate of bills or activities that C.A.R. is considering. It usually comes with a recommendation from C.A.R. staff that C.A.R. should be for a particular bill, which means that C.A.R. would back it. Against, C.A.R. would fight against it. Those are fairly self-explanatory. The other two options are neutral, which means we're just kind of taking a step back, but we still think it might be real estate related or not real estate related. The committee will discuss, ask questions of staff and committee chairs, try and learn as much as possible. I mean, we have tons of reading material beforehand as well, so we're not going into these things blind. And then we'll make a motion to vote for one of the four options. That goes from that committee to either legislative, if it's a state issue, federal, if it's a national issue, or if it's something that C.A.R. is going to spend money on, strategic planning or finance. And they'll also discuss, debate, and go through it in detail before it eventually goes to C.A.R. Board of Directors. That's 850 real estate professionals from up and down the state, selected by their associations, such as these people here, and for some reason me as well, who will again debate this, will again go through this in fine detail, and eventually come to a conclusion. So when you see C.A.R. is for or against something and you wonder, well, how did they come to this conclusion? That's the process. There's a lot of scrutiny. There are a lot of opinions that go out. Again, it's the first time attendee. Obviously, I have the Taxation and Government Finance Committee, but I attended every meeting I could physically get to, which was both eye-opening and slightly overwhelming. There's an absolute ton of information, which I know the rest of the group will bring to you. But it is absolutely fascinating to see the debate process and the voting process in action. I did a politics degree at undergrad, so for me, this was kind of catnip. Maybe a little unusual in that. A lot of committees, it's not only the committee members who can speak, non-members can come up to the microphone as well, and you see a few faces recurring. I've got to say, you guys know I like the sound of my own voice, and I even stood up 3 times, not necessarily in my own committee. I know some of you are shocked. But one other impression that I really came away with is when we're making decisions within our own association, it's easy to almost feel like we're functioning within an island. We have our 5 cities. Are we just a kind of locally focused organization? But having listened to other professionals, again, from up and down the state who are facing similar issues to the ones we are, or have previously faced issues that we are likely to come up against in the future, you kind of get a shared experience. You get an opportunity to network and pull from their previous experiences, learn from their successes and their failures. And just an understanding that, yes, we're a membership of about 2,900, but there is a full state membership who are also driving towards the same or similar goals. And that's actually quite heartwarming. You do feel like, you know, we have a number of other professionals and associations who are also trying to achieve the same things. It's not just us, we're not just alone, we're part of a wider group. Anyway, that concludes my report, and I will hand back to you.
Thank you, Nick. And now I'm going to call up Giuseppe Veneziano.
Good morning again. So when I went up to Monterey, it was quite a drive. It's pretty cool. Another 5-hour drive up there. I was assigned a few committees. One of the committees that I was assigned to was Commercial Investment Forum. And there we had a forum where a lot of like-minded individuals went to talk about, one of the issues that they talked about is tax reform for the 1031 exchange. How many people handle 1031 exchanges here? So here's a couple of pop quizzes here. So while you're in the middle of a 1031 exchange, would it be wise for your client to file their taxes?
No, we can't.
Good job, Bob. No, you can't. That's correct. If you do, your 1031 exchange has gone out the window and they're going to get taxed. If they are in the middle of a 1031 exchange, and just a little disclaimer, I'm not giving you advice on this, okay? They should have their tax preparer file an extension for later in the year, so that way they can go through the 1031 exchange and then they can file their taxes. Otherwise, they will get taxed, and then they will have the G6 restrictions would, they'll have their withholdings that come up, and either the accommodator or the escrow will withhold the money that essentially is part of their profits. So also, here's another question. In terms of tax filing dates, whichever one's earlier, what's the days that allowed to find a replacement property?
180 days?
45.
Oh, it's
45 is to find and 180 days to close.
there you go.
Not 6 months, 180 days.
Yes, that is correct. It's 45 days to find a property to replace the one that they're selling, and 180 days to close that. And it's like my dad says, it's 180 days, not 6 months. So some months are shorter than others, and longer than others. So keep that in mind. And whenever you're doing a 1031 exchange, definitely before you start working on the sales, consult with one of those accommodators, because they know the ins and outs and the way to go ahead and strategize how to work the process so your client is not angry at you after the escrow is holding their withholdings. So you also want to make sure that. Also, 1030, still on the 1031 exchange, because that's what they talked about at the commercial investment. Just remember that prorated rents, security deposits, credit for repairs, closing costs can be potential taxable situations. So also consult with the accommodator before you go ahead and get into a 1031, because as with investment, you want to make sure that you're protected and your client is protected. That's the best. That's what we're in this game for. And now here's another question: does anyone know the difference between a title holder versus a taxpayer? And this is regarding reverse 1031 exchanges.
The title holder is the accommodator. And it holds the title at that point because it's a reverse. It could be a corporation or it could be a holding company.
Good job. She got it right,
I
yes.
know I'm doing.
There's someone that does 1031 exchanges.
Reverse ones.
Reverse ones. Yeah, so the title holder would be the accommodator that would buy the property prior to your client selling their property in order to go ahead and make that transaction work, and that is called a reverse 1031 exchange. Go figure, it's after the fact, right? So one other thing that they did talk about is, and we all try to not do it, but we end up doing it, is don't give tax advice to your clients. Let them consult with their tax preparer or their CPA, because at the end of the day, when taxes are involved, you do not want to be in a lawsuit because you gave wrong advice, right? For realtors, we, even though we might dabble in a few things here and there with knowing the information, let's not go ahead and give tax advice. Some of the other commercial investments that we talked about, the ADU guidelines. So all the cities are now starting to come up with their ADU guidelines. So check with your local city that you actually sell real estate in, so that way you know and you are informed of what their procedures and processes are. Here's a good one. How many of you have heard of Bitcoin? I joke about it all the time. Right now, it's actually, I have a bet with Lee. He says it's still going down. I say, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to bet you. But so right now, you're not going to necessarily buy real estate with Bitcoin, but the technology behind Bitcoin, the blockchain, which is the decentralization of information, is coming full speed ahead in real estate transactions. And actually in Chicago, Cook County is actually one of the first counties in the United States to start using blockchain technology for their title recordings. So it's a good way to prevent fraud. Now, I don't know how many people know about blockchain, but blockchain is basically, you have a series, instead of having one server in accounting that stores all the information, if that server gets hacked, information's gone, right? Information can go into the wrong hands real easily. With the blockchain technology, you have millions of computers out in the world that are computing, and they all have to match in order for this transaction to go through. If one is off, then it draws a red flag. So that's where the technology is coming to. It's more for fraud prevention than to actually purchase real estate with Bitcoins, although that may come in the near future. Another committee that I was assigned to was investment housing. And so there's a bill that was going passed around up in Sacramento called AB 423. And that's the right for property owners to go out of business. So Sacramento was trying to stop, because if you own property, you're a business owner. That's not in a retail way, but in a, you're getting income way. So if your property's upside down or you're not being able to pay rent and your property goes to foreclosure, well, the government's trying to prevent you from being able to close your doors and sell your property. So what they're trying to do is back a bill for the right for property owners to be able to go out of business if they are upside down or if they're in foreclosure, where they're not going to get penalized. Because at the end of the day, that can pose a high tax liability, or in terms of the amount of money that gets foreclosed on. We'll be talking about, Lee will be talking more about the Costa-Hawkins, which is really a big issue that's coming up from Sacramento. However, we did talk up briefly about it, where we want C.A.R. to give more information to all our realtors regarding the tax reform for, the housing, what do they call it now? No, not portability. It was for housing for rent control or housing rent stabilization. So that's one of the motions that came out of that forum, was to have C.A.R. widely inform us exactly of what's going on with the rent stabilization. And other than that, there was a lot of there was some other committees that I was assigned to. There wasn't much action in those, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Giuseppe. And now we'll hear from our president, Helen Marston, who's going to talk about rent risk management. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning. I'm going to report on the current issues that are affecting real estate. We all agree that we're in the business, the industry that make money. But in the meantime, we agree that we're dealing risk every single day and every single transaction. So I have two main things today. One is disclosure issues that currently we have. Number one, these are across the California, not only our area. So some items we may deal daily, some we are not maybe, but it's good for us to know all. Disclosure issue number one, grant unit. And we all know now the grant unit is not only for grant use now. And then with all the state law passed January 2017, so now we all have ADU in different cities, that accessory dwelling unit. So we as a real estate professionals, we need to know what's ADU, and when we in the transaction, that definitely need in the disclosure. And then, so we need to pay more attention on that one. And number 2 is creeks. This might not in our area, but once if you have, in case, have that property near creeks, and the first thing in your mind, what is related? And what will cause in the future, maybe potential floodings. And then, so we need to be aware if your client's property near creeks and then disclose. The number 3 issue is water intrusion, and usually that related to drainage issues. And if your client have water intrusion before, then you probably need to ask, do they have insurance claims before? And then you probably need to ask the home inspection report before they have. And then definitely all these should be within the seller disclosures. And then number 4 issues that the roots. If you see your client have big trees in your yard, and the first thing you need to be aware that is whether they have the root issues. And if whether they have something fixed in the past years, then you probably need to have some document to prove. Or if they never have root issues, and then for the buyer agent, if you didn't have any of the seller disclosures regarding the roots, and you probably advise your buyers, maybe they need to do the further inspection, have the plumbers with the cameras, just eliminate our risk. The next disclosure issue is the flipping house. Nowadays, we have a lot of flipping properties on the market, and then when we, what do you think the first risk when you see the flipping houses?
What's underneath?
Vacancies.
Well, many of the flipping houses might lack of permits. So you make sure that you have all those in files, and then ask the leasing agent to provide those, the permits from the city. And remember, we usually say that the handyman cannot handle any of the repairs, fixings over $500. So if any job involved above that amount, should be done by the contractors, the licensee contractors. And then last, the disclosure issues, the buyer material issues. And then we do have a form that the buyer material issues, go check your zip form library. They should have this form, and then you should use this in your file. And then if anything in your mind that will cause, okay, can you name a few of the buyer material issues?
Death on the property.
Of course, number 1. What else?
Air conditioning?
Permit.
Yes.
Airports.
Yes. So anything you think that will effect on your client's decision to buy or not, to offer higher or not. Any factors that need to be in that buyer material issues. So this is a big issue, and then I hope all of you can utilize this form and then to disclose everything. Just like we said today in the Code of Ethics, we would rather over-disclose than lack of disclose. So just be aware that when you list properties and then you ask every single questions to your seller and then do the best of disclosures. The other two areas is the number 2, agent trouble areas. And we have a lot, but the most we have, well, from A to J, that's still a lot. I just quickly go through every single one. One is buyer purchase properties sight unseen. I cannot believe, per Redfin reports, last year, the buyers make offers without seeing the property. Can you guess how many percentage?
75?
No, not that.
33%. I cannot believe, we're not buying groceries, right? Well, that is a really big investment. But, 33% of the buyers make offers without seeing the property.
Very trusty.
Well, and then that's put a lot of risk on ourselves. So be careful. If you have buyers making those offers, you need to give the best advice, but you need to disclose everything. Everything you see, you need to disclose. And then I see now the listing agent will put a remark saying that don't make offer before your client looks the property. And then if we are listing agents, I suggest all of you should put that in your remarks right now. Next, agent trouble area is verifying buyer's ability to purchase. We do have a lot of cases that open escrow and then fell of escrow. And many of them actually is lack of the ability for buyer to buy. And then I think that's the both sides problems. As a buyer, when you are ready to make offer for your buyer, do you have known that your buyer is capable, ready, financially ready to buy? I think we should, completely. And then for the listing agents, when you receive offers, do you review every single page that you received? Do you 100% trust that the buyer agent filtered everything and then provide the offer and the buyer actually have the ability? So I suggest that as a buyer agent, even before you take them to your car or take them to go to see properties, you should know whether they are ready, they are qualified to buy. You're not wasting your time, right? And you are not hurting your image. When you submit an offer, it's not only your buyer, it's you too. How many of us want to deal with the agents that they are trustworthy, they can close when they submit an offer? So if you have buyers and they make offers and then fill out escrow right away during the transaction, and then I really doubt, next time when the other agents see your offer again, how they counted on you. So that's not only about clients, but also about us too. And the next issue is party signature for each other. Do we have all those? Spouses next to each other, or when you run to a client to sign the contract, only one spouse there, but they have 2 names on the contract. And then you say, oh, it's fine. You can sign for a spouse. No. But we have cases like this. And then, one's having issues and the other spouse said, no, I didn't sign it yet. How come that, go through this far? And then you showed the signature, they said, no, it's not mine. And then the other spouse said, oh, that I signed that day, but my realtor sat next to me and he said, it's okay. So no, no, no. Next one, transmitting key documents by DocuSign. Nowadays, I know many of us signing our contracts, main documents by DocuSign. It's so convenient for us. Sometimes your client is far away, even in a different country, and you signing all those documents by DocuSign. And apparently you have a lot of problems, because some agents, they just sign the DocuSign without explaining any of the terms, major things on your contracts, and they just let the client sign automatically. And then that's caused a lot of problems. And then they will see, oh, you know what, my agent just tell me sign. So when we have issues, who are the first person to be blamed? Realtors, right? So we need to eliminate those risks. And then when you do DocuSign, make sure you sign without, you send without, before you put those sign frames, let them review first. And then always, if you can, I prefer face-to-face, especially the first time, and especially first-time buyers. You explain every single thing with them, even when we have technologies ready. And then I remember I spent a lot of time, like 2 hours at least, for the first-time home buyers, because they have a lot of questions, and then you need to answer them one by one before you submit offers. So just make sure when you use DocuSign, you let your client read first and prove it, and then you sign the DocuSign. Next one, handling emails and the texts. And then nowadays we use all different kind of forums, channels to do our transactions. Not always send emails. Sometimes we not always in forums, but we in emails and texts. And those emails, texts should be part of your transaction. And so you save them that combined with all the forms, all the communications in the transactions. So those can be your proof. For example, you say something and then kind of say, okay. And you remember you need to send a text or email, say, repeat what the client say in an email, and then you save it to your file. Okay, number one, security cameras. Nowadays, very popular for a lot of homeowners have the cameras. If they are outside property, it's fine, because that's common, normal. But if some of them, they even put a camera inside their property, have to be careful. So I think for us, maybe now, you all ask, if you see the cameras outside the property, you ask your clients whether they have cameras inside the property. Because it's happened. One landlord, when they put the lease, they said, okay, no pets, right? And then one day, he sent a letter to the tenant saying, you breach contract because you have the pet, and you have a pet inside the property. So how did he know? Because he had the security cameras inside living room. I don't know whether in the bedroom. But we do have cases like that, doing the open houses and all property showings, and then the security camera inside the property caught everything, every your conversations, even bad scenes. And so, if your client have camera inside the property, disclose. and let the buyers and even tenants know that there are camera inside. And also probably have to talk about whether that is okay to have the camera inside. Maybe you should remove it, when the tenants sign the contract before they move in. Maybe it's a good idea to remove the camera inside the property. Hopefully I scared you enough. By the way, I know other than all these are probably the most issues we have, but we do have others. So just be careful in our practice. And number one, disclose. And number two, make sure that we utilize our forms and then we also disclose. Thank you.
Next time I moderate the panel, I'm going to go first. I'll make it real quick because I know we have places to go. But three things that are real important this year. Costa-Hawkins, Giuseppe alluded to it. I bet if I sent out a questionnaire, probably less than 5% of you would know what Costa-Hawkins was. But Costa-Hawkins put limits on rent control. And for example, if you do property management in LA, you're pretty familiar with the limits of the rent control. It doesn't apply to single family, it doesn't apply to new construction, and let's see, if they move out, then you can raise it up to market rent. Just cause eviction, so that if let's say you buy a duplex, you're gonna move into one half, you can evict the person, but you have to pay their relocating expenses, and in LA it gets up to about $18,000. So, but that's a just cause eviction. Without those provisions, you would not be able to evict the person, regardless of what your intent was when you purchased it. There would not be limitations on new construction. Nobody would be building right now, and anyways, it wouldn't be good for our industry. The Assembly tried to overturn it. It didn't go through. That was what Helen was talking about last week. Our Assembly member, Ed Chow, refrained from voting, and that was the decisive vote last week. So again, thank him when you see him, because it did not pass. But we have been told that it will be on the ballot this year, and that's being funded by Michael Weinstein. And if anybody remembers him, he was the one that funded the no growth or the building moratorium in LA that was defeated last year. It cost opposition about $60 million to defeat that. He's from I believe he made his money selling pharmaceuticals, and he's known for his AIDS Foundation. And one of the things that it's no secret that they're trying to do is trying to drive renters to the polls. So because they think the renters are younger, there's a common political slant among those renters, and they want to get those people out to vote. Okay, so that was the Costa-Hawkins. The other thing is a split roll. Hopefully you all know what split roll is. It has to do with Prop 13. It would be that there would be no limits on the increases of your property taxes for investment properties, second homes, things of that nature. And then we have the portability issue. We have a regional team captain now, Danielle Fontes from Citrus Valley. We'll be either having her out or we'll join them for a live stream in a couple of weeks, and you'll hear more about that. It's going to take a big effort on the part of realtors to get this portability passed. It's going to be on the ballot this year. We already have 25% of the signatures. In fact, now we're probably closer to 50%. We still need the realtors to turn in their signatures. couple things when you're filling out those forms. The signatures cannot go outside of the box. There's like 4 signatures that you get on each one, and those signatures have to stay in the box. They all have to be in the same county. You have to turn the whole packet in together. Can't just be the signature page. Has to be filled out properly, and there can't be any other scribbles on the page. It's crazy, but they make it difficult for a reason, and we have to play by their rules. So anyways, I intended to speak longer, but if you do have questions, don't hesitate to stop me and ask me afterwards. Thank you. And thank you to our panel.